Every city, every town, every hidden corner of the world carries its own energy. Some places breathe peace, others carry chaos, and a few harbor something far darker. There are regions where spiritual shadows linger, where rituals whisper through the night, and where the power of witchcraft seems to thrive stronger than anywhere else. Today, I will take you on a journey into 5 of the most unsettling places where witches gather their strength. And I promise you, when we reach the 5th one, you will find it almost impossible to believe. When we speak about the places where witches thrive, our journey must begin deep within the ancient forests of Europe. These forests are not just clusters of trees, they are sanctuaries of silence, wrapped in layers of history and mystery. For thousands of years, people have walked among those towering trunks, not only to hunt or to gather, but also to seek the unseen. It is in these woods that countless rituals have been performed, and the earth still carries the echo of voices that whispered prayers not to the divine, but to something else entirely. There is something unique about a forest. It shields secrets. The thick canopy blocks the sun, and beneath its shadows, time almost stands still. This is why so many chose these places for their gatherings. In darkness and silence, one can hide, but one can also summon. The soil beneath your feet has soaked in not just rainwater, but also blood from sacrifices long forgotten. The air, still as it may seem, is heavy with memory. That is why those who are sensitive to energy will tell you that when you walk into some of these forests, your body tightens, your spirit feels unsettled, and your mind cannot rest. It is not the trees that disturb you. It is the unseen presence that lingers within them. Legends across Europe are full of stories of witches meeting in circles deep in the woods, dancing around fires, chanting words passed down through generations. Many dismiss them as tales created to scare children, yet when you look deeper into the roots of these stories, you begin to realize that not all of them are imagination. History books record trials and confessions, testimonies of villagers who spoke of gatherings they dared not approach. The forest became more than nature. It became a cathedral for the dark arts, where intentions were cloaked in secrecy, and the power of shadows was magnified. The reason witches are drawn to such places is not difficult to understand. Forests represent life itself, birth, growth, decay, and rebirth. To those who practice witchcraft, these cycles are sacred, but when twisted, they become dangerous. The natural energy of the forest is like raw fire. It can be used for warmth and light, but it can also burn and destroy. Witches who choose the latter channel that energy for curses, for control, for manipulation. And while trees do not speak, they hold memory. Step into the wrong part of a forest, and you might feel as though unseen eyes are watching you. That is not imagination. It is the weight of centuries pressing upon your soul. So when we talk about places where witches thrive, remember that the ancient forests of Europe are not merely backgrounds for old fairy tales. They are living witnesses of countless dark gatherings, and even today, some still choose their cover for hidden practices. What many believe to be harmless folklore is, in truth, a shadow that still lingers, a reminder that darkness often hides not in the distance, but just beyond the trees. When we move from the silent forests of Europe into the remote villages of Africa, the atmosphere shifts in a profound way. Here, witchcraft does not always hide in the shadows of folklore. It walks boldly in the daylight, woven into the very fabric of culture and tradition. In many of these villages, ancestral practices are held with deep reverence. Some of them carry the beauty of heritage, the wisdom of healing, and the strength of community. Yet alongside those, there are practices that blur the line between the spiritual and the sinister, between healing and harm, between blessing and curse. What makes these places unique is not only the presence of rituals, but the power that people believe those rituals hold. Belief itself is a force, and when a community is convinced that certain words, certain actions, or certain sacrifices can shape reality, that conviction amplifies the energy behind them. Witches in these regions thrive not simply because of secrecy, but because of the collective fear and reverence they command. It is not uncommon for entire villages to whisper the names of those they suspect, avoiding them in public, yet seeking them in private when desperation strikes. Power thrives in such dynamics when fear and dependence coexist side by side. In these villages, witchcraft is not a story passed down to frighten children. It is a lived reality. Crops fail, sickness spreads, accidents happen, and often the explanation given is not natural but supernatural. It is said that witches can twist destinies, steal blessings, or trap souls, and so the fight against such forces becomes just as real as the rituals themselves. Families turn to counter practices, burning certain herbs, anointing their doors with oils, or performing protective rites handed down through generations. Every action is a reminder that the spiritual is not separate from the physical, but deeply intertwined. The danger here is how easily the sacred can be corrupted. Ancestral traditions that were once rooted in harmony with the earth can be twisted into something destructive. A chant that once called for rain might now be reshaped to call for someone's downfall. A ritual once used for healing might be inverted into a curse. And when such practices are fueled by fear, envy, or greed, they gain a momentum that spreads through generations. Children grow up witnessing the same cycles, and without breaking them, the chains only tighten. When outsiders visit these regions, many dismiss such beliefs as superstition, but those who live there know better. They know the weight of invisible battles, the cost of spiritual warfare, and the reality that darkness can mask itself as tradition. The remote villages of Africa remind us that witchcraft is not always distant, hidden in forgotten corners. It can be the heartbeat of a community, pulsing with power, fear, and influence. And it is within such places that the shadows find fertile ground to thrive, feeding off both belief and ignorance. When we turn our gaze towards South America, the atmosphere becomes even more complex, because here witchcraft often hides in plain sight. In the bustling streets, the crowded markets, and the small alleys where people gather, you find an unusual mixture of culture, spirituality, and sorcery. It is a place where the sacred and the sinister often sit side by side. Shamans are respected for their healing powers, their knowledge of herbs, and their ability to connect the physical with the spiritual. Yet not all who claim this title walk in the light. Some carry knowledge not for healing, but for harm. They work with the same plants, the same chants, but twist them into weapons of spiritual control. In cities and towns across South America, you will often find stalls where candles, powders, and charms are sold openly. To a stranger, they may look like harmless trinkets or colorful souvenirs, but for those who know their meaning, each item carries an intention, some to draw prosperity, others to bind relationships, and still others to inflict pain on rivals. What makes this environment so dangerous is that the line between cultural expression and witchcraft becomes almost invisible. You might be walking through a marketplace, believing you are simply surrounded by culture, yet unseen hands are weaving rituals in the background. Unlike the hidden gatherings of Europe or the secluded practices of African villages, South America shows us a different picture. Witchcraft thriving in the heart of everyday life. It thrives in cities where music and celebration mask the undercurrent of rituals done at night. It thrives in families who pass down secret knowledge while appearing ordinary to the outside world. And it thrives in communities where fear and fascination keep people returning to those who promise solutions that science or reason cannot provide. The real power here lies in accessibility. Witchcraft is not distant. It is available on every corner for those willing to pay the price. But there is also something deeply deceptive about it. Many who seek out these practitioners do so in moments of desperation. A mother whose child is sick, a man whose business is failing, a lover who fears being abandoned. They come with pain, and pain makes people vulnerable. They are offered solutions that sound comforting, rituals that promise quick results. Yet what they often do not realize is that such solutions come with invisible chains. The blessing may feel immediate, but the cost is hidden, and it always comes due. This is how witches in these regions thrive, not only by power, but by exploiting the weakness of those in need. So when we speak of South America, we cannot ignore how witchcraft blends itself into culture, how it wears the mask of tradition, and how it lures the vulnerable into its grasp. It is here, in the ordinary streets filled with life and color, that some of the darkest exchanges take place, proving that evil does not always hide in shadows. It often thrives in the open, waiting for those who are willing to look the other way. When we journey into the vast lands of Asia, we find temples, shrines, and sacred spaces that were originally built as places of light, devotion, and connection to the divine. Yet, even the most sacred ground can be corrupted when intention is twisted. Across different regions, there are temples where incense once rose as a pure offering, but over time, that same smoke has been used for darker rituals. It is a sobering reminder that the structure itself does not determine holiness. It is the heart of those who step inside that shapes the energy of a place. Asia is filled with rich spiritual traditions, ancient practices designed to bring harmony between body, mind, and spirit. But when those practices are taken out of their true context and inverted, they become tools for domination rather than liberation. Some temples that should be sanctuaries of peace instead become gateways for witchcraft. The chants spoken within them may sound the same as those of genuine seekers, but the intention behind them is different. One invokes healing, the other summons control. One opens the path to light, the other anchors chains of darkness. From the outside, these places look like any other temple, majestic, calm, and inviting. But step into certain hidden chambers, and you can feel an unsettling weight, as though the very air carries an invisible resistance. There are stories across Asia of people entering such temples and leaving with burdens they did not carry in. Sometimes it comes as sudden fear, sometimes as confusion, sometimes as a lingering heaviness that follows them for days. These are not accidents. They are the results of spaces that have been claimed by rituals not meant to liberate, but to ensnare. The soil absorbs what is offered, and if what is offered is darkness, that energy multiplies. Just as kindness can linger in a place where love has been shared, so too can oppression remain in a place where curses have been spoken. What makes this even more dangerous is the authority that such places carry. People come to temples expecting to connect with the divine. They enter with trust, reverence, and humility, and it is in that very openness that they become most vulnerable. A person who would never seek a witch openly may still fall under the influence of witchcraft when it hides behind the veil of religion. This is why corrupted temples become powerful hubs for those who practice dark rituals, because they disguise themselves under the cover of holiness. And so, while Asia shines with countless places of authentic light, we must not ignore the shadows that lurk among them. For when sacred spaces are misused, their power is not diminished, it is redirected, and in that redirection witches find fertile ground to thrive, using what was once holy as a weapon of deception. It is a chilling reminder that darkness does not always look frightening. Sometimes it wears the robe of holiness and waits inside temples where the unsuspecting come with open hearts. When people think of witchcraft, they often imagine remote villages, deep forests, or hidden shrines far from the noise of modern life. Yet one of the most unsettling truths is that witchcraft does not only belong to the past or to distant lands. It is thriving in the very heart of modern cities across the Western world. Behind the polished buildings, the crowded streets, and the glowing lights, there are secret gatherings that most never notice. These are not always gatherings in the traditional sense, where cloaked figures meet around fires. Today, they exist in hidden apartments, in closed-door societies, and even through the digital world, where covens meet online, crossing borders without ever leaving their homes. The unsettling reality is that in places where people believe themselves to be too advanced, too educated, or too modern to fall into superstition, witchcraft finds a new kind of strength. It thrives in disbelief. When people dismiss the existence of darkness, they become more vulnerable to it, because they no longer guard themselves. Many who would never step into a forest ritual or a village ceremony unknowingly step into energy, just as dangerous when they are drawn into spiritual traps, disguised as empowerment movements, occult practices, or secret rituals promising success, love, or influence. The difference is that here it is dressed in sophistication. The tools are different, the language is modern, but the root is the same. The manipulation of unseen forces to gain control over outcomes. In these cities, witchcraft hides not in isolation but in integration. It weaves itself into art, into music, into clubs and gatherings that seem harmless at first glance. Sometimes it is even normalized through entertainment, until the lines between fascination and participation blur. A young person may think they are simply curious, dabbling in what feels like harmless rituals, yet unknowingly they are opening doors that are not easily closed. This is how the underground thrives, in plain sight, but unrecognized. Even more unsettling is the rise of digital covens. Groups that once needed secrecy and distance now find each other through screens, sharing rituals, chanting together through video calls, and spreading their influence across entire continents without ever meeting physically. What used to be limited to specific regions has now expanded to a global scale, and many who stumble upon these communities find themselves entangled before realizing the gravity of their involvement. The fifth place is not a faraway forest, not an ancient temple, but the city you live in, the one you walk through every day, filled with hidden currents moving beneath the surface of ordinary life. This is why it is almost unbelievable, because we often expect darkness to look dark, but in reality, it often wears the mask of the familiar. It does not announce itself as evil, it presents itself as power, as knowledge, as freedom. And in these cities, surrounded by lights and progress, many are unknowingly standing closer to witchcraft than they ever imagined, proving that the most unsettling places are sometimes right where we live. The most important truth to recognize is that witchcraft is not only about the places where it thrives. Yes, forests carry memories of rituals, Villages breathe with ancestral power, cities pulse with hidden gatherings, and temples sometimes hide corruption. But beyond geography, the real battleground lies within people themselves. Darkness does not need a forest or a shrine if it finds a willing home in the human heart. The truth is, evil does not only thrive where it is practiced. It thrives where it is invited, even unknowingly. Fear is one of the greatest doors through which witchcraft gains access. When someone believes they are powerless, when they live in constant dread of curses, when they surrender their peace to the possibility of being attacked spiritually, they create fertile soil for darkness to grow. Witchcraft feeds on fear because fear magnifies its presence. In the same way, ignorance becomes another gateway. When people laugh at the unseen, dismissing it as fantasy, they lower their guard and become exposed. The most dangerous enemy is the one you refuse to acknowledge, because while you deny its existence, it works freely. But perhaps even greater than fear and ignorance is desire. Many fall into the grasp of witchcraft, not because they seek to harm, but because they are desperate for love, wealth, or influence. The promise of power is enticing, and those who cannot wait for blessings to unfold in the right way often try to force outcomes through forbidden means. What begins as a small compromise, burning a candle, reciting a chant, carrying a charm, can become a chain that binds. Witchcraft thrives not only in hidden places, but in the human tendency to seek quick solutions, shortcuts, and control over what was never meant to be controlled. The danger is not limited to those who actively practice it. Even those who remain passive, those who allow darkness into their homes through what they watch, what they speak, and what they embrace unknowingly, can create an atmosphere where such forces linger. A television show that normalizes rituals, a song that glorifies curses, or conversations that laugh at the sacred. These may appear harmless, yet they open small cracks, and through those cracks, the unseen begins to enter. This is why awareness is essential. Knowing the reality of witchcraft is not meant to inspire fear, but to awaken vigilance. Light is always greater than darkness, but light must be chosen. It must be lived. Those who understand this truth carry protection wherever they go, whether in the forest, the village, the temple, or the city. Because ultimately, the place does not matter as much as the spirit within. Darkness seeks entry, but it cannot dwell where it is not welcomed. So remember this final truth. Witchcraft may thrive in many places, but its greatest strength comes when people leave themselves unguarded. Guard your heart, guard your spirit, and you will find that no place, no matter how dark, has the power to overcome the light within you.